Back live on a new stream. I don't even know how this is going to get worked out. We'll figure it out. I don't know. Where were we? Judging from the last video, we missed a whole bunch. So we were back here. That's where the last video ended. We're at, this is cut 5 is where we are now. Got cut off just at the beginning of cut 5 in the previous live stream. So we're picking back up now with everybody still heading to the woods for cut 5. And what we missed was, here we are in FHK Woods, and the light was pretty cool in that, again, this is the second year at this cut site. And so, between the progress from last year and how much progress they've made this year already, we're getting this pretty cool light situation where there's more light coming in and you can actually see the sunrise peeking through the trees. So that I could play with trying to get something like this. That's close to what I wanted. And I believe the one that worked out the best was this one. I believe. That's pretty all right, but I wanted to get the sun in the wedge, so that's... We got that one there. Now, while that was going on, went back through the that hole in the woods. So right behind where FHK is here, the core was right behind them. And right behind the core, or across the tractor path from them, was Lechner. And so Lechner was calling a log. And I was talking with a couple of the seniors there as Lechner was calling the log, and went to go take a photo that I thought was at least, the potential to be kind of decent. And right at that point, there comes one of the juniors. Screwed it up. Oh well. He's probably thinking about more important stuff. So we're at the core woods. And you'll see, I kind of get in different positions depending on how I know what somebody can do with an axe. And I'd seen this guy get some quality instruction a couple weeks before from one of the Browns, and see that he's, graduated to... he had been underestimating himself with a smaller axe, and started swinging something a lot heavier. And anyway, I felt good about what he was able to do, and so kind of put myself in a position like this, where meanwhile I'd never seen him swing before, so I'm in a position at this point that I feel better in for being around, getting close, but around somebody I haven't seen swing before. So I'm back through the woods, and back in Leggett's area. And there's my girl. She got one mowed down by herself. That kid's Modi. She's a bruiser. I think I got a couple of her swinging on a bigger tree. And she done good. She goes hard, no doubt about it. So Leggett's working on clearing brush. A little bit lower light. See, it's all blurry. Too much motion in there. I was slow to adapt. It's my fault. Happy to see her doing work. When she and her sister came out last year, I think Leggett was. I don't know if Leggett was cutting. I think Leggett was at unload or something, but they weren't. The girls weren't in a position to cut, and so they just went out ahead of everybody. No, what it was is they were doing a swamp fest, moving logs out of the woods. That's what it was. And so Leggett hadn't started cutting yet, and so the girls didn't. My girls didn't have anything that they could do yet, and so they were just running out ahead of everybody, pulling branches and things out of the tractor paths or the swamp paths, so everybody could move without tripping over anything. And I was a proud papa to overhear. Nobody's saying it to me, but to hear them talking. Well, look at them too, getting after it. So they work hard. They love bonfire. It's nice. I appreciate that. So here the brown is in Leggett Woods, getting some stuff out of the way, throwing wood chips into my camera. It was a little bit too low light, far too low light where we were for me to be able to catch it where we could, I'm trying to catch it where we can see some wood chips, the wood chips that were completely covering my camera, but wasn't able to get that in as short a time as I had to get him doing what he was doing. Can't exactly ask him to slow down so we can experiment. So we got a couple. Now they're hauling out Yopon, and they're getting ready to call one here, I believe. Again, more work on the Yopon. All right, so we're back. Here's Hart swamping logs out of their woods. FHK getting involved. So I was trying to get to where I could get, that sun, sort of the same thing that was happening with, cutting down this tree, kind of coming from behind the tree, but between the sun having rose the way it did and them being on the move, I needed a kind of a too severe an angle to get that sort of effect. I kept trying, but obviously I'm not even close. And for me to get the angle I needed, I would have had to have been right in their way and right in front of them. So I just switched to shooting for something else. The general discomfort of moving a log here. Some of that required intensity. So I just missed, and I don't think I got any photos of this so far this year either, but hiking a log, grabbing up underneath and downset hike like you're hiking a football. one of the ways to move a log. You can roll a log, you can hike a log. Very rarely, I haven't seen this in a long time, but very rarely you can pull on it with a rope when necessary. I haven't seen that in a bit. And then the most common way here is, of course, the swamping of the log. As they say when swamping a log, trees on stumps, stumps on trees, meaning a tree-sized person, a big person. The bigger you are, the closer to the front, the stump, right? So the tree-sized people on the stump end of the log and the stump-sized people on the tree end of the log. And this log belonging to Leggett, it's Leggett that's calling the log and everybody else is helping. There was a cool shot there for a second that I missed, just that the angle that was available to me and everything. I wish I'd have gotten it, but there was this cool view of it. At one angle, it was her hand here, and you could see her under here, and the tree-sized person here, and it was cool, but I just missed it. I mean, just missed it. So, oh well. And while this was happening, back over here, still, waiting for everybody to come back so she could be killing trees again. There's my little motivator. So here's that one of those other ways of moving a log. They're rolling it out. And this one's a little bit less to it, so Leggett was handling it without anybody else jumping on it. See all the Leggett pots down the length of the log. And so now here's what I was here for after being now on the 5th cut of the year. Finally getting to see Leggett. Finally getting to see Leggett cut on a tree. And I honestly thought we were going to be able to start sooner with that. But with all the other stuff they had to move and all the brush they had to clear, I ended up waiting over there for a while before we got this. And I was really happy with getting to give them the attention they've earned. And the light in the whole situation. So we had some light where I could do something like this. Now I can only look at these on the back of my camera sometimes, maybe. So I don't know exactly how they're going to turn out until now when I'm going through them. So we see that, some of these don't. But in the mix of some of these here, I wanted to catch some movement on these. And I know in the mix of some of these here, one of those in that shot's going to work. And I'm disappointed that this shot doesn't work. I was happy with how it framed out, just taking a quick glance at it, but it's just not. It's messy. So unfortunately, I can't use that one. Now, one of the browns jumped in, and when I was taking this shot, so there's a couple things that when I'm setting up to take a shot, um, I'm considering. Um, I'm considering my safety when I'm taking certain shots. You know, especially swing shots. We saw that with the core tree. Assuming you didn't get disconnected on that one, but I'm taking into account my positioning and how safe I'm positioned on certain shots, but I'm also taking into account the experience of the person who's swinging, not just for my safety, but for theirs, where I know that if I'm in a certain spot with some folks, it can make them a little bit nervous. And so I don't put myself in a position to make anybody nervous. But when I've got an experienced brown pot swinging on a tree, I know that at this point I'm leaning up against the tree. I'm probably, my foot in this shot is a couple inches away from his. And so I think this is the one. There was a couple where I caught right when you realized. I mean, if you don't know what's happening, you might wonder what's going on in a photo like this. So there was a couple where it was clear that, oh yeah, he's swinging an axe. But in any event, while I'm positioning to take these photos, I heard a couple folks saying, "Oh my gosh, like he's close." And I wouldn't do that to somebody that I didn't know for an absolute fact was going to continue to be comfortable. And you can tell he's so dialed in on what he's doing. He doesn't even know I'm there. And so I backed up. So you can just see the shadow of the tree the silhouette of the tree that I'm leaning up against. But when the next person started swinging, I backed off a little bit. Now the tree is here to my left. Even if she misses with the axe or lets go or whatever, I've got the tree between me and her. But I backed off so that, not for my sake, but for her. But she very quickly dialed in herself on what she was doing and was clearly unfazed. So her being as unfazed as she was, then I snuck around here to get some of these. And I was trying to get a sneak at, they had told her to work the outside of the wedge. So the outside of the wedge is whatever part of the wedge is farthest from you. So her being a righty, the outside of the wedge is over here. So I was hoping to get the axe just kind of catching the outside there, but it was a little dark. So I kind of switched tactics a little bit and tried to get some motion. Instead of that, freezing that moment, try to catch it. Some motion coming into it. And that's the one. That's exactly the one I was going for right there. And then we switched to one of the Leggett Chiefs chairs. And so this should be familiar. It was from this set that we get the cover. And I believe this is the one we used for the cover. But again, somebody who's dialed in. I like this one too. I think I ended up going with the other one though. Got to talk with my daughter on the way home about what she thought of who was in charge in Leggett, and just really impressed with those leaders there. It's nice to have a little spy on the inside, you know. And every weekend, you know, when my girls go out with them, they're just in all these college kids, which is why, you know, I don't generally try and hang around too much when my girls are working, because it doesn't matter if I'm there or not anyway. Why are you still here, old man? They're just with their buddies working. But afterwards, we got to have a nice chat, and they love their Liggets. I think there was one in this angle that I ended up pretty happy. I think this is the one. One of the seniors showed up. Gave it a go, one of the green pots. And there's mine. Getting after it. Last year, when we were getting ready for her first year out, we went out and worked on a tree in the yard. And I was wondering about this one because she's a firecracker. So I was wondering if we could focus that energy when she's wielding a sharp axe. And I was prepared to spend more than a little bit of time working with her on that, and I didn't have to spend any time at all. It was actually kind of scary how good she was with an axe without any practice. So, kind of intimidating, but she got after it, making chips in the whole 9 yards. So with Leggett caught up, and then, you know, getting my dad moment just to admire what she was getting after. At that point, it was time to move on. Caught a chainsaw set here while one of the Browns was working on something else real quick. Walking by load site, which you had to walk by to get anywhere. So while I was there, just get a couple of them working. One of the chiefs here had I think it's important to mention, you know, given the nature of the work, I don't want to, you know, get into too much detail about, you know, stuff that goes on, you know, in people's day-to-day lives or whatever. But given the nature of the work, I think it's important to point out when you see somebody with a cast, you know, in this case, you know, of course, bonfire is hard work. And it's, you know, we've seen there's lots of opportunity. There's big trees and axes and whatnot. So I think it's important at this juncture to point out that this was actually a bicycle incident in town. So if he'd have gotten a boo-boo at bonfire, I'd have mentioned it. But in this case, a little bicycle thing, and you know, here he is still leading. And I gotta tell you, I broke my elbow a couple months ago, and I had a sling on for a couple weeks. I mean, we're talking dead of summer, and you know, I've got the luxury of not, you know, getting sweaty, and so I didn't. And even trying to stay from getting sweaty with that sling on, not sling, splint, hard splint. After the 10 days or whatever I had to keep that thing on, the itching, good grief. I've never broken a bone in my life, so I've never had to have a cast. And I had a hard sling for that elbow. And I got to tell you, on the last 2-3 days, that was driving me bonkers. And I was doing everything I could to keep from getting hot and sweaty. So I can't even imagine at this point what he's feeling like with that cast on. But there he is doing work the way he's supposed to. So good on him. There's OC yellow. Nearly yellow, finishing calling a log. And so on this day, after we got disconnected with that first live stream, I might have are we still coming through all right? Oh, there's going to be so much editing and post on this. Good grief. Oh, this is going to drive me nuts. So as I was saying, on this, I'd have just said, well, it's a loss. We missed half of the live stream. And I'd have just finished what I had to do on this. But the thing is, I got to go through these because we had a pretty cool little deal on this weekend. 25-year reunion out in the woods. Old Reds out there getting after it. See? The whole crowd. And so they came out, and of course they had to swamp some logs, and you better believe they had to cut one down too. So here's the first. And let me tell you, he was not holding back. Not with all of his buddies back there for sure. And they got after it. So if you've seen me, shoot anything before, you know what I'm after here. You can probably figure what I'm after already. This sort of thing is what I'm trying to do. Again, this can't help myself. A lot of focus on that. So that's what I was playing around with here. And fortunately, all of them were wearing nice reflective glasses to have a go at doing the old. I'm gonna wear this whole thing out, this whole reflection thing. But with the light and everything being what it was, how could I help myself? But it was nice to see them out there, and it was nice too. I'm around. Obviously, I'm around bonfire all the time, and so I see it every year, little bit by little bit. Things change, and some things adapt on purpose, and some things just happen to change, and some of these changes I don't even notice. I could tell you now that it's different than years ago if I look back on it, but while it's happening, it changes just in such small increments in some cases that I miss it. And so it's really cool for me when former students come back, especially former leadership, and they participate and they get involved and they see what's going on, and to be able to there we go. To be able to see kind of through their lens what bonfire's like by comparison now to what they were doing. I mean, you find over and again former students come back, and for all the differences in you know in some of the things that people do and how they do it, the same sentiment all the time is that it's really, in the ways that matter, it's still the same. It's hard, it's unforgiving, it demands your attention and your respect, it demands good leadership, it demands forethought, it demands all the things that matter. But there's still things that change that in a lot of ways are very different, like setting wedges, right? So now all the wedges are set by whatever senior leadership is in the woods around the tree at that time. So if they're about to cut down a tree, or if they're looking at a tree and a yellow pot is available by that tree, then the yellow pot's going to set the wedge. If a crew chief is available, the crew chief is going to set the wedge. And in this case, this tree was picked out by the red pot, so the red pot's going to set the wedge. They're going to be the first one that establishes where that wedge is going to be on the tree. Now, that whole process of setting the wedge and then guiding the development of that wedge, its shape and its profile and which direction it's pointing, all that's overseen now by whoever set the wedge. And so we get to this tree, and Head Stack says, y'all ready? And they said, yeah. He says, oh, I'm going to set the wedge. And they all looked at each other like, what are you talking about? You're going to set the wedge. And he said, yeah, I'm going to set the wedge. Well, that's not something that they did. And frankly, that's not something that we did either. That you just go up and you just start cutting down a tree. And of course, you make sure that there's nobody around, and you're checking your directions, you're checking your clearances and everything. But, you're just going to start working on the tree. And so, it's different now. And so there was that sort of, that recalibration of, wait, so what are y'all doing now? You're telling me we can't start swinging on this till you said it? And, it's, there's more deliberation now. And it's certainly that slows things down a little bit. That is sort of a barrier to have to overcome when you want to get to work. So it's different. I'm not saying it's better or worse. It's just different. And you forget how different that is until there's these other folks who come back and kind of remind you that, oh yeah, this is way different. And I even had to, I pointed out to the current senior ed. I was like, you know what? Actually, yeah, it was about 2008, 2009 that this really started to get to be a thing. I think 2008, 2009 at the farthest back, that the governance of how the wedges are set up and who sets them and all that started to become so controlled. So, lots of reasons to be motivated by former students coming back, but it's always just generally interesting for me being around all the time to have somebody former students come back and kind of say, hey, welcome back to the past, and remember how we used to do it. And what we were doing too was probably different enough for them to notice. Certainly was different enough for them to notice. But what we did was more like what they did than it is like what the current students are doing. Anyway, just part of the fun having former students out. Here's Head Stack taking his turn. And here we go, finishing off the back wedge. The back wedge, I mean, here he's working on the front. We're talking just a couple minutes later. There's not much back wedge going here. And with the lean of the tree and how deep they set that front wedge, it didn't take very long at all. And so now you get to the dangerous part of the tree. I don't want to say, well, dangerous is probably the wrong word, but we get to the part of cutting down a tree that can be pretty, the most taxing. Because you're going to get tired swinging on a tree no matter what. If you're swinging on the front wedge, you start getting tired, you just turn around and next person up. But when you're swinging on the back wedge and you've got a tree that's about to go, well, you're not giving up your spot. So you're going to keep going. You're going to end up swinging past the point that you're wearing out. And I don't know, but I got the impression that he was ready for this thing to come down. And it does. It's coming down there. Now, some of the things, you can see he's happy to let it go. Because it's clearly going, and it doesn't need any help to get there. But what we used to do when we were cutting down trees is, no matter what, you didn't hope for the best. No matter what, you kept swinging on that. You kept swinging on that back wedge here until the tree was completely off. And so there wasn't exceptions to that. Just err on the side of caution and keep swinging. That is what we felt was the safest and best way to do it. Well, at a certain point, everybody decided that you stop swinging on the wedge once the tree is starting to fall. So while the start of the tree might be different now than it was before, you see here that, he's doing now something different than what we used to do, but it's more like what they do now, which is it's going, so just let it go. You don't have to keep swinging on the wedge once it's already broken just because the tree isn't on the ground yet. So while some things change and become more different, some things change and become more like the way it was. And there's no doubt in my mind that over time we're going to see some things that, as different as they were for this 25th reunion, we're going to see pieces from 25 years ago that come back into play. And we're going to see some things that they do now stop happening. And there's just going to be continuous evolutions, and some of those are circular. Some of those things, you're going to evaluate, you're going to change how you do things, you're going to experience some challenges with doing things in a certain way, and you're going to stop doing those things, and you go and you're going to start doing an old thing, and you might not even know it's old. You might just say, hey, we're going to try doing it like this now. And what you're actually doing is doing it the way it was done 20 years ago. And so there's going to be things, every generation is going to come back and go, oh, you still do it exactly like that? Yeah, but we hadn't done it like that in 10 years, and only in the last couple years did we start doing it that way again. And I keep saying we. I mean, at this point, sure, I'm going to advise the students if they have questions, and certainly if I see something that I just don't feel comfortable with them doing, but there's very little that I see them do that I don't believe in them doing. So when we is the wrong word. The students are going to make these sorts of decisions and transitions, and it's just, in so many respects, just going to keep coming back around. And every year, on campus, off campus, Duncan Field, Simpson Drill Field, Polo Fields, every generation, every iteration, every location of Bonfire is going to be able to come back, and they're going to find a lot of things that are exactly the way they remember them. And they're going to come back and they're going to see things and go, what in the heck is that? Anyway, speaking of things that don't change, here he is checking out the very pot that he wore. And I don't mean, there's a lot of different ways to say, pots. Pots are the actual physical, this is a pot and this is a pot. But pot, when it refers to a leadership position, this is a yellow pot. He's a crew chief. Pot can also refer, a person can be a pot. So he is a pot. He is a yellow. He is a dead pot. He used to be, a crew chief and a red pot. So, but in this case, he's not just looking at the line of leadership that he used to wear. This is the actual physical, real helmet that he used to have. It's got his name on it. So, and with that, that's the end. That's the end of cut 5. I'm going to develop those. But point being, a really great end to a great weekend of Bonfire. Seeing those things come together, see that Bonfire grows and changes, and there are things that one generation finds different than what they did. But when they were building Bonfire, there were things that they were doing that previous generations came back and said, what in the world are you doing? But most importantly, most critically, what they're going to find is that the fundamentally important thing is still the same. That students are out there doing students students in college who are, in some cases, less than a year out of high school. In the case of crew chiefs who are leading students in this endeavor, they're just over a year in college. When this semester started, they were just starting their second year of college, and they're out here leading this thing. So we're talking young people, students who have responsibilities to family, to friends, to school, scholarships, all these other things that they got to do, and they're still out here doing this thing, which is no small potatoes. It's hard work. It's not done properly. It can be dangerous work. But by respecting each other, understanding that before you lead, you must follow. A good leader is a servant first. All of these sorts of things. Digging deep and working as hard as you possibly can, and harder than you're asking other people to work. All of this stuff. Looking at, is there an easier way to do this? Okay, let's avoid doing it that way and let's do it the harder way. All of this is what fundamentally defines this experience and has never changed. For how you set a wedge to change, and do you keep swinging on the stump as the tree's coming down, or do you stop, and can you wear a glove on the base hand, or all of these different small things that have changed over time and come into fashion and back out and been decided that this is the way we're going to do it, and nope, we're not going to do it that way at all anymore. That go in circles and come in and back out again, and all that change. What stays the same is what matters, is that students in college are taking ownership, continuing to take ownership of a tradition that stretches back now for over 100 years. We're looking at 114 years back was the first that students created this tradition, and they continue it to this day, building something incredible. And as incredible as Bonfire is when it's finished to look at, as incredible as it is for people to see on that one night out of 365 nights in a year, that one night when it burns, it looks mind-bogglingly impressive. And yet that's only one night out of 365 days that Bonfire is doing something every day to build. That one night is the easy night. That one night, to anybody who's built it, is the least impressive experience of the entire operation. And that's what's always, as long as that is always the case, then Bonfire is as real and valid and alive as it ever has been. As long as students are testing themselves and making the experience about building it, not burning it, and most importantly, building themselves and building each other and building on a history, then Bonfire's the same. So, like I say, a great way to end a motivating weekend, to see another generation come back and get back in it for a little bit, and see these students, this confluence of histories, these students carry forward with what they've been handed. And, maybe one day if I can still come out there and still have it in me on the weekends, maybe one day, 25 years from now, we'll be seeing this exact same situation with him looking at the pot that he wore. One hopes. Whether I'm there or not, that I can guarantee you that's going to be happening at some point. So with that's it. A special 2-weekend Cull and Good Bull, and also a special unplanned two-parter. So these will all of the Culls and Good Bulls are still they're still up to go back and look at later, and a little white noise when you're in the office or whatever it is. And of course, I'm gonna have more than a little bit of editing to do for all of our technical interruptions tonight. But most importantly, know that the Aggies are building Bonfire. They're going into another cut this weekend. Got the big Bama game on Saturday. And we are going to beat the hell out of the Crimson Tide. I'm telling you that. Mark my words, we're going to beat Alabama. And then the next day, Aggies will be out in the woods. This weekend is going to be parent cut, or father, well, used to be father-son cut, then parent cut. Now it's family cut. Talk about things changing. Families are going to be out in the woods experiencing what their Aggies are doing. We're going to see... we didn't get to have one last year on account of COVID, so it's been a couple years since it's happened. It's going to be a heck of an experience. So if you've got an Aggie building Bonfire, come out there and join them. Come participate. They'll ask them for the paperwork. If you haven't seen it yet, get them to send you the paperwork so you can get that filled out and get to work. And we're gonna have another great weekend. And as we close in, we're getting pretty near the end of cut. In 3 more weeks, we're going to be transitioning into stack time. I think we got 1 or 2 doubles left before then. I bet we're going to have a night load in there somewhere. So a lot of work left to do, but then again, we're getting close to the end of this phase of Bonfire. So stay tuned. Support these motivated Aggies. As we said in part 1, the unexpected part 1 of the unexpected two-parter, your support for the gallery, Dion C Gallery on Patreon, and dion-c.me is the website. Your support of the gallery is providing Bonfire with new lights this year. So we're going to light up Stack. It's going to be beautiful. They're going to be able to see better than they've ever seen before. We're going to put lights out on the skids, out in the fields. All of that made possible by your support for the gallery, so that we can get Bonfire squared away on that front without it costing Bonfire a dime. So thank you for your support in getting us there. We're going to secure those lights, I believe, on Monday. But your support in catching up on that is going to be deeply appreciated. And of course, your support for Bonfire at Student Bonfire on Facebook and Twitter, and studentbonfire.com/donate to figure out how you can donate directly to Bonfire as well. Many of y'all, see you in the woods on Sunday for Family Cut. Saturday, beat the hell out of Bama. Build the hell out of Bonfire 2021. Gig 'em, Aggies.